And I spoke with the man of the hour, Sharvil Patel, Managing Director of Zydus Group. Sharvil Patel, congratulations. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us on Left, Right and Centre tonight. You know, there are many firsts to this vaccine, from being a DNA vaccine to a non-needle based. And what really is most exciting is that this is the first COVID-19 vaccine to be available to kids above the age of 12 in India. How did that happen? Did you always intend to make a vaccine for kids?
So yes, I think there were the reasons when we went through the selection process of what platform we should make a choice on. We had looked at multiple factors. We did look at the factor that this being the coronavirus, we would see rapid mutations that we'll get to see in the virus, which would mean we need a platform that can be rapidly adapted to the new strains. Second part of it was, which was very important, is that when we all knew that efficacy will take longer. We were definitely needing to make sure that the safety profile was good, because we are going to give it to a large number of people, and the safety became a very paramount interest. And now there is enough publications both by the WHO and the US FDA on the safety of the DNA platform. The third was, we were very excited about the point that this was the first dosing which would be without a needle. So this will be done through an application which is needle free. So a lot of vaccine hesitancy or any hesitancy is also driven because of, causes of needle injection or blood. And I think this removes that side effect of at least worrying for patients, children, adults, whoever are in that period of time. So I think looking at all of that, because of the safety of the platform, it doesn't have any vector-based immunity, because of the fact that it can be delivered without a needle, and it can be rapidly, updated towards a new variant. We were able to do so, and that's why the regulators also believe that testing it for adolescent population was good, because in all our earlier trials we had seen very minimal to no safety signals that were worrisome. So that gives us the confidence to move into the 12 to 18 years, and in the future they move into the 3 year plus age group also.
But were you focusing on a vaccine for kids, given the fact that this is the only age group that in India for whom we don't have a vaccine so far, and that's also why our schools haven't been able to open up?
So I think when any vaccine development is started by any of us, the whole point is you need to go through phases. You need to test it on a population which is less risky, which is the adult population. And then you incrementally add towards a more vulnerable population, which is different age groups, comorbidities and other things. So as I said, as the development continued, as a phase 1, phase 2 moved forward, we had also certain set of, possibilities and signals that we saw that this is very safe for the younger age group also. And that's why we focused to make sure that while we create the large cohort of 28,000 subjects to be administered, we will create a cohort of at least 1,000 plus adolescent population of 12 to 18 to cover also, which we succeeded, and we overshot by another 400. So because a lot more, obviously there was a need to do so also. So that's how the whole progress of this vaccine has happened.
And I'm not sure if you've had any of these talks with the government in terms of supply, but do you think that when this vaccine is out and available, it should be prioritized for students, because there are other vaccines for adults, but no other vaccines in the market that kids can take? So we haven't had the discussion yet. Logically, yes, obviously there has to be certain amount of doses that should be prioritized for the 12 to 18, because as you said, there is no vaccine available for them. Having said so, while if you look at for the adult population, there are only 2 options today really which are available, which is obviously the Covaxin and Covishield. So from that point of view, and there is disproportionate amount of quantity that's available by one versus the other. So I think the adults also need a choice, because I do know of a lot of adults who still believe they want to make a choice on which platform they want to test or take. So I don't know if everything can be allocated to the adolescent, but I think that discussion needs to happen with the center and the vaccine task force, which will then finally make the outcome as to where we can target towards. But logically, it will be obviously a large proportion of that will be, I should believe, would go to the 12 to 18 year age group. So by that, because you're saying you want this also to be an option for adults across India, are you saying then you are confident that you can supply enough doses to cater to both a demand from adults
and the student population in India?
No, I think for the size and scale of our population, I don't have the capacity or the capability in the next 3 to 4 months to supply to every. I mean, it depends what you need, but it's obviously we are talking about only 1 crore doses a month, which is definitely not the requirement. The requirement is far larger than that. So I think one fact that we need to now solve for is, can we scale it up and see how we can make more than 1 crore doses a month? And that discussion we will also have now with the center and the vaccine task force also. But as I said, currently I wish we could produce more, but currently our capacities with the new plant and the new investments is about 1 crore to maybe we can stretch to 2 crore over a period of time in a month.
A reality check there. Mr. Patel, how soon can we expect this in the market?
So as I said, it's a lot of things need to happen. We need to have audits that need to go through well. We need to make sure that we finish the sterility test, and we also need to go through CDL testing, which is 14 days. So if everything goes as clockwork, we can see sometime mid to end September, the doses starting to be made available. And the full scale up, we believe by middle to end October is where we can see the full scale up of the rollout.
Certainly music to all of our ears, given the fact that Indians have only vaccinated about 9% of our population so far. But have you decided on a price?
No, because it's a price is a math. We need to discuss what would be the center's policy to buy and procure and what quantities they would like to procure. And also we will also need to discuss with them in terms of which age group and others. So I think those discussions have not honestly started. We have not even had one round yet. So it's very difficult to talk about pricing, but I think one thing we are very clear on, that we will make it definitely affordable. Our track record and history has been that we have made, when we launched HCQ or Remdesivir, we did prices at the lowest in the country, and we believe that we will also make this affordable, but every platform and technology is different. So I think that discussion is still needs to happen.
All right. And lastly, Mr. Patel, did you also specifically work on storage and temperatures to make it suitable for Indian conditions?
No, I think that again was the decision on the selection of the platform last year in March when we started working on it. We made a choice that our priority was to supply to India always, that our home market is something that we would make sure that we supplied first to. And when we looked at that, obviously supply chain and cold chain distribution was the most critical aspect because in the vaccine space. So this platform is very thermostable. And definitely obviously it can be stored at refrigeration temperature at 2 to 8. It can definitely be kept for at least 3 months at 25 degrees and it doesn't get spoiled. We know about the freeze thaw, when if you by mistake freeze the vaccine and if you thaw it again, it can still be used effectively without any challenge. And there are multiple other studies of open the vaccine and kept it for 4 hours and if you're still okay to use it. So it's an extremely thermostable vaccine, which will be good in terms of less vaccine wastage and other things that lead to because of the cold chain requirements.
Sharvil Patel, thank you, congratulations, and we wish you more strength to deliver on all of your promises. Thank you. Let's get to the other big story today. Around 150 Indian citizens who are wanting to return to India and who were picked up by the Taliban and questioned this morning have been released and are now safely inside the Kabul airport. NDTV has learned that they're likely to be airlifted out of war-torn Afghanistan soon. Indian citizens waiting outside the Kabul airport for evacuation flights were taken to a nearby police station for questioning and checking of their travel documents. A top government source said all of this amid some worrying reports from local Indian media that they had been abducted. The Taliban's picking up of these Indian citizens comes hours after an Air Force transport aircraft managed to evacuate around 85 Indians from Kabul earlier in the day. That plane landed safely in Tajikistan. Sources say, adding that a second aircraft is on standby in India. Chaotic scenes were seen at the Kabul airport on Friday night as US military personnel were seen trying to contain large crowds seeking a way out of Afghanistan. Thousands have been attempting to fly out of the country since the takeover by the Taliban, but first they have to get past insurgents, checkpoints, crushing crowds at the gates of the airport. Videos have emerged of the desperate situation outside the Kabul airport as people gather in the dark, pressed up against the barbed wire-topped walls of the airport. Occasional streams of gunshots can be heard. And in an indication of the extent of the chaos, the Belgian Foreign Ministry confirmed that one of its aircraft took off from Kabul without a single passenger, because those persons who were supposed to be on board got stuck outside the airport in the crowds gathered there. Well, joining us now is Amar Sinha, former ambassador to Afghanistan. Mr. Sinha, thank you for your time. An Indian Air Force rescue plane carrying 85 Indian citizens took off from Afghanistan on Saturday morning, but another 150 at least, that's at least what we know of, they are stranded at the Kabul airport. To say that this is a challenging, anxiety-ridden exercise would be an understatement. Could you give us a glimpse into just how challenging this is? You know, how much ever information you could share that's not sensitive, diplomatically, physically on the ground, etc. What does this entail?
Well, you see, first of all, I think the biggest challenge is not sending the aircraft. Biggest challenging is to collecting the people and getting them to the airport safely so that they have an access. And this drama or this unfortunate sort of delay that has been faced by these 150 people is basically because of that. There's lack of coordination on the ground right now. They don't know which airport entry to get in. The main Kabul airport entry, of course, is absolutely packed with people. And it is insecure. So obviously nobody will open. Americans are in control of the airport. They won't open it because they will see a huge surge of people getting in. So that is the real challenge. Second challenge, I think, is whether the Taliban commanders who are controlling the checkpoints on the road, and these are all Haqqani boys who have taken over Kabul security, I am told that they did not allow Hindus and Sikhs who are Afghan citizens. So that's how another delay took place, that they looked at all the documents and then only segregated the ones with Indian passports to come in. And part of it flew off in the morning, the other part are still stranded there. And they have been on the road literally since last midnight.
So it's not just the Indians who are at the airport, it's also Indians who may be in other parts of Afghanistan, you're saying, Ambassador. You know, details of this evacuation exercise, of course, very sparse, under tight wraps for operational and security reasons. But complicating matters is that the Afghanistan airspace is closed?
Afghan airspace is closed or controlled by Americans, but only for military operations, not for commercial air flights. So that's why our area, etc., cannot go. So there are no commercial airlines going there.
No, so that means that India would have to work on multiple fronts, right? Given that the Kabul airport is controlled by the US military, there's also diplomacy involved in bringing stranded Indian nationals back home?
Yes, everybody has to work with the US because they control the airport and the airspace for the time being. They are controlling the ATC, they are controlling the entry and exit points, and they are the ones who are slotting what time which aircraft can come.
So, because no commercial flights in the US, Kabul airport is in US hands.
Basically, yes, you have to work in sort of close cooperation with the Americans to get the slot. Also then fine tune that your people who have to be evacuated reach the airport, and then they are allowed entry onto the tarmac and into the plane.
And you know, Ambassador, India evacuated its envoys, diplomats, officials, security personnel and some nationals on aircraft on Monday and Tuesday, 2 days after Kabul fell to the Taliban, effectively, I think, closing our mission for just the second time since 1996 when this militant group captured power. Would that not also be a huge challenge? Because, I mean, if there's no Indian officials on the ground to oversee, to coordinate, to look out for Indian nationals, that must be complicating matters further.
Well, if you ask me, I would think, yes, that's an added complication because it's very difficult to do these things remotely. But I believe that there are some local staff who are old hands, who have worked in an Indian embassy for a long time, who are trusted, who are well known locally. They are the ones who are managing this. They are coordinating with people, getting them to one place. And of course, we are working the channels from Delhi, I presume, both with Afghan important leaders who are in contact with the Taliban and people on the ground. So that's how it is happening. And besides, of course, coordinating with the Americans.
Ambassador Sinha, the Indian government had clearly advised all Indians to evacuate while commercial flights were still flying. But to be fair, nobody knew, I mean, to be fair to the Indians left there on the ground today, nobody knew that Kabul would fall so soon.
No, absolutely. Well, people are people. You know, it's our duty to advise them, to issue advisories. And I guess this is their karma not to obey government regulations. And it happens everywhere. This is not unique to Kabul. Kabul, of course, situation is bad. But I can tell you, even today, there are people, despite hundreds of advisories, they are still staying in Libya. And we had a situation only 3 years ago or 4 years ago when people who came back from Libya evacuated went back. So we had to take some drastic measures of actually taking back their passports when they came here, repatriated. So yes, that slight lack of discipline is there, but then government will not take a view that since you did not obey, I'll leave you to your fate. That is not the right way to go, and I'm sure government is not going to do that.
And could you explain why our aircraft is reportedly on standby at Dushanbe or landing in Dushanbe as opposed to being on the ground at the Kabul airport?
Well, it's just because of ease of reaching that place. You know, these are military aircraft which have a difficulty in overflying over Pakistani airspace, because otherwise, if suppose we could overfly, say, from Amritsar base, overfly Pakistan, we would have reached there in an hour. So to save time, basically, I believe that 2 aircrafts have been placed in Dushanbe at Aini. There is one, of course, is a bigger C-17. But it takes a much longer turnaround time, and which is not the window you are getting. So you have also placed smaller aircraft, which basically ferries people to Dushanbe, and that's a 40-minute haul. So it's very quick turnaround time also. That's the reason. So that is just for operational efficiency, let's put it this way.
So lots of logistics to work around. But Ambassador, is it also a cause of concern that there could be terrorists from Pakistan-based groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba, the Haqqani network, you just mentioned them, that they're also present among the Taliban forces who are at checkposts that are en route to the Kabul airport? Is that a concern for Indians?
Yes, I think because India has been, the history is that Haqqanis have targeted India. All the attacks on the embassy and the consulates were done by the combination of Haqqanis and Lashkar-e-Taiba. It was never the Taliban. But the problem right now is that the Haqqanis have taken over all the security or the control of the checkposts in Kabul. And that's a reality. And we will have to deal with that.
But the Taliban had told India initially not to evacuate its nationals, saying that they're safe. But since then, we've seen the Taliban was seen force entering our embassy, our properties there, going through contents there, reportedly taking away parked vehicles. So in that context too, are Indian nationals at any special risk or stand out compared to other nationals or those with other passports?
Well, there the risk is for everyone. But of course, Indians are always in the crosshairs of Pakistani-based terror groups, basically because they take orders from you know where. And I've heard these reports on they're entering the consulate in Herat and Kandahar. Kabul has been quiet. There has been absolutely, and you're right, I also heard that there were some assurances given. But then the problem is it's right now a free-for-all in Kabul. And while the Taliban leadership and the Taliban cadres are saying what they are saying, they may or may not have control over every actor which is there. If you saw the video on the people entering the Parliament House, there is somebody who's speaking Urdu there. So obviously he's a Pakistani, he's not an Afghan. Because Afghans, when they speak to each other, it's always local Dari or Pashto. So I don't know, he was there in the parliament. I have heard reports that all the security officers, all the Afghan security officers and the intelligence officers, their homes have been ransacked and vandalized. They have been swept electronically repeatedly over the last 4 days. They are now looking for their staff, their security guards, their drivers. So yes, there are a certain set of people who face much more threat than everybody else. But then you can always be in the wrong place. You know, you would have read about the German citizen who got injured in a random firing that happened there.
So a very trying, difficult time. Lastly, Ambassador, our thoughts are with those 150 Indians on the ground and their families for whom it's going to be a long night. Your, last words or your thoughts for them right now?
My thoughts, of course, are with the families and the Indians, which is, I think, priority number one for the government of India, that they come back home safely without any harm. So I guess government would just do just about everything possible to do that. Obviously, we will need some patience in this because it's not a very clear picture. What's happening on the ground is absolute, complete mayhem. But the fact that our 150 people were escorted by the Taliban themselves, they were unharmed. It's a different thing that they couldn't enter the airport premises to take the flight, says that the Taliban, at least some elements of the Taliban, are sticking to what they promised to you. Yes. But as I said, that there are different elements. Let's not presume the Taliban is one monolith and under one single chain of command. Right now, there will be a lot of mischief makers, and there will be countries which will be using different forces to create and sow this sort of a discord. Because, people who have brought Taliban to this place don't want Taliban to become a monopoly on power. They would do everything possible to discredit that government also, so that their dependence on their erstwhile mentors remains. So that's a larger, deeper political game that we have to be very conscious of.
No, this is a long road ahead. But the right immediate priority is getting our Indians out.
The safety and security of our citizens is absolutely primary. And then, of course, if the Taliban would allow, there are a lot of Afghans who want to come, friends who have been partners with India, see how we can evacuate them to safety.
And that, of course, the first thing to focus on getting our Indians back home. Thank you, Ambassador, for your time. Thank you for your perspective.